All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to our monthly webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about actionable strategies to capture more 340B claims and increase profitability. My name is Dan Dimitri. I'm the CEO of PharmaForce, and with me is our Chief Product Officer, the great, magnificent, and amazing Anthony Velasquez. We've gained a lot of insight over the years, from used to managing 340B programs for covered entities to now the last 6 years since we've taken the step of starting our own 340B third-party administrator and having, we're almost in every state and having hundreds of customers. We've gained a new level of insight and opportunities in the 340B program, from compliance to capture, financial capture, and trying to stay true to our mission of why we started make our own 340B TPA to begin with, to improve the 340B experience to our peers and colleagues. We wanted to give back to this community with some of the insights we've gained over the years. So with that said, we've got 30 minutes of content here. If you could stay longer after 30 minutes, we're going to open up the floor to just Q&A. We're actually going to, as a change this time, we're going to also open up the mics so we could have actual dialogue. But feel free to ask questions in the message, the webinar message poll, or the chat. We'll also look at those questions there and answer them at the end of 30 minutes. So with that said, I pass the ball over to my friend, my partner, the great Anthony Velasquez.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for that presentation. I got to live up to it now. All right, so again, thank you all for joining our monthly webinar series. This is, I believe, it's been our third or fourth that we have done on different 340B topics. We have a lot of content for you in a short period of time, so let's go ahead and get right into the information. So I'm going to try to go over several different pieces of information, and I'm going to do that briefly. I'm not going to go into any one of these topics and any amount of significant depth, but it will be enough that hopefully you'll be able to go back to your covered entity and implement some of these strategies, or look at some of these things immediately and hopefully find value. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about some goals. We're going to talk about pharmacy network expansion, clinic and specialty service expansions, qualification logic, data accuracy, manual review workflow, referral capture, monitor, manufacturer blocks. And as Dan said, we're going to have a little Q&A session at the end. So our goals have always been to inform, to inspire ideas, and to provide value. We're huge on being a value provider just to the 340B community in general. 340B is such a complex program, such a difficult program to follow, that we just want to share everything that we have learned and give back and share with everyone that's part of the overall 340B community, and hopefully help you manage your program a little bit better. I always like to say, if you are a beginner or a newbie in the 340B space, like I was back in 2011, this would be a great presentation that will cover the basics. If you are a veteran and you are involved in some more advanced strategies and dealing with different things in 340B, maybe you're going through a TPA transition or all the other things that happen on a day-to-day basis of the program, this will hopefully be hey, don't forget to do the basics of 340B to make sure that you covered all the areas where you could have the leakage of prescriptions not being captured. So let's get right into it. So number one strategy that I want to share about today is to not forget about pharmacy network expansion. It's very easy to be involved in the day-to-day, the fires of the day of your 340B program, but don't forget to always look at your data periodically. I will say twice, maybe twice a year, maybe even quarterly. Review your e-prescription data. Try to pull that e-prescription data that has the pharmacies that your providers are e-prescribing to, so that you can see where the volume of those pharmacies, or where the volume of your prescriptions are going, and see if those pharmacies are part of your current contract pharmacy network. So whether that is for a CVS contract, or a Walgreens contract, or even an independent pharmacy contract, or even specialty, you want to always look at where your prescriptions are going. This should be a normal part of your data review and data analysis, is to see where are we e-prescribing and sending our prescriptions. I encourage you, those of you that have health systems with multiple electronic medical records, maybe it's really difficult to pull e-prescription data, work directly with your clinics. If you have hospital-based clinics and if you have specialty clinics, meet with them and ask them, where are we sending prescriptions? Where are our patients going to get their prescriptions? And that will give you some insight into where you might have volume being prescribed that you're not currently capturing or are part of any of your TPA agreements or arrangements. Another really important resource is your TPA usually has a pharmacy resource available. This is someone that might be dedicated to just pharmacy network development, someone that will reach out to you, someone that could take your provider list and send it out to pharmacy partners, whether they are gateways or even working with independents and things like that, and try to find new opportunities for you, new pharmacy opportunities. Again, I think this is such a critical part of I would even say it should be a basic part of your 340B program operations, just to make sure that you are building a network where the volume is already going. And again, work with your TPA, reach out to your TPA and make sure that this is something that is being done with your provider list, or maybe provide them with your provider list and see, make sure that your network is covering all the different areas where you're sending prescriptions. The other thing that I want to know is consider specialty arrangements, and home infusion and home delivery strategy is now something that's big in the market as well, of finding where patients are going that they could be better served by a home delivery strategy. The last thing I want to note on this is not every relationship is a good relationship. I say this all the time. I've been in many 340B programs where the contract pharmacy relationship is, number one, not profitable once you take into account all of your TPA fees, when you take into account your dispensing fees, et cetera. That relationship might not be profitable. So definitely do your homework and make sure that relationship is profitable, and review your current network for profitability to make sure that your current pharmacies are profiting your program and not costing you in fees. All right, so let's move on to the second one. This is something that's a little bit more advanced, but if you are part of usually this happens at larger health system, but it may happen if you have a small hospital that maybe has provider contracts and things like that with a specialty pharmacy services. But make sure that you're reviewing that all of the clinics associated with your health system, that those clinics are 340B eligible. And if they are not, find ways, work with your hospital leadership or your team to figure out how those can be made hospital-based, how those can be added to the cost report, how those can become part of your hospital. This is something that I have worked on extensively in the past, working on the 340B side. It's an excellent way to increase your 340B program, even tenfold in some cases, depending on how the hospital is structured. It is very difficult. It is time consuming. It does require a lot of expertise in many different levels, but it can be done, and it can really increase your 340B program significantly. Another thing that I'd like to say is, when you're meeting with your 340B committee, make sure that your finance leadership knows that 340B, it's an important part to consider when the leadership is considering maybe acquiring a clinic or acquiring an infusion center or acquiring another facility. That 340B plays a role in making those decisions that the leadership might not be aware of, that could help sway that decision in one way or another. So again, this is a really great way to increase your 340B program and your profitability, especially when you're dealing with specialty prescriptions, but also even if you have a primary care provider clinic. All right, so moving on. Another one, this is one that I think is the most basic sort of function that you should be doing in your 340B program to make sure that you are maximizing your value. And this is one that I think a lot of covered entities miss, because it can be difficult to know how to do this, but you have to review your qualification logic. You have to make sure that the TPA partner that you're working with really meshes well and works well with your workflow and the data that you can pull. I highly recommend an e-prescription setup, for example, but really knowing, can your TPA support an e-prescription setup? If yes, how does it work? Provider types, does your TPA support multiple provider types, or is there single provider types? Looking at your look back periods, I think that's one that looking at your look back periods periodically, maybe even quarterly, just to make sure that you're adjusting for your risk. So if you have a really big look back period and in your audits, you're finding a lot of things that are being captured that shouldn't be, then looking at adjusting that, or vice versa. If you find that you have a look back period of 0 days and you find that, man, maybe if I made it about 10 days, I could increase my capture rate by a little bit, and maybe have your TPA do some analysis on those scenarios for you. That could be one way that you could immediately find more prescriptions to be captured in your program. There's other things where a TPA partner is so important, because there's logics and features in place that are often very difficult for the CE to know how the TPA works. There's things like name mismatching. Can your TPA handle situations where the name of a patient is entered as hyphenated in the pharmacy, but it is not hyphenated in the electronic medical record? How does your TPA handle that situation? That's something that you should know right away, and you should know how your TPA works in that situation. Does your TPA have reprocessing? Or are your non-capture claims being reprocessed every so often to ensure that they were given a chance to capture? For example, does your TPA reprocess claims periodically, whether daily or every week, and different, and just on different intervals to allow for data to be caught up and things like that, where you may or may not have an automatic process for sending your data to your TPA. So again, this is one where, ultimately what we see a lot is covered entities considering different TPA partners, just going out there and seeing what are the options that I have that best fit with my covered entity. If you have a great TPA that fits well with your covered entity, that is great. That's huge to have a partnership like that. But if you feel that there could be opportunities in your program to improve, definitely talk to other TPAs in the market to see where there might be a better fit and a better partnership for you. All right, moving on to the next one. And this one is huge. Data accuracy and data monitoring is probably the #1 reason for a lot of covered entities having really low capture rates. Your program is only as good as your data. So as I have here, good data equals good results. If your data is not good, if your data is missing locations, if your data is sending, the wrong locations, if your data is missing required fields by your TPA and you don't even know it, and that information is being dropped, that could be the reason why your capture rates are really low at a certain pharmacy or for your program overall. If you have multiple electronic health records, that's another one that I've seen commonly, where a hospital would have an electronic medical record for the hospital, an electronic medical record for the clinics, and those data feeds are not either sent in one data transmission file, or both are not sent. So I would encourage you, if there's anything that you would take away from this presentation, is audit your data. Understand how your data fits with your TPA. As I have here, not only automate, but validate that your data is being sent over accurately to your TPA. You will find so much good nuggets of information when you look at your data, see what you're sending, especially those 340B coordinators and managers who are just coming into a 340B position of a program that was already established. This is a must do in sort of the first week as you're reviewing where the state of the program is to review the data, make sure that it's accurate, make sure that you're pulling the data correctly and that it's automated, and also make sure that you're monitoring that that data is going over to your TPA regularly on a daily basis, to make, and even I would even add, look at the timing of transmission. Some TPAs, the processing of the claims might happen before that data file is received from your covered entity. So even if you get more into the weeds of looking at the data, is looking at timing, asking your TPA, when do you process your claims? Because we're sending our e-prescription file or encounter files in the middle of the day. Does that mean that you have a 2-day delay for using that data to process my prescriptions? Those type of things are good for you to know how to better increase your capture rate and perhaps even capture prescriptions much quickly. All right, great. And ultimately, last thing I'll say is use multiple qualification strategies. You know, there isn't one strategy that fits all covered entities. You might be a small organization that has all fully employed providers, or you might be a really large organization that has a high number of e-prescribing, but then you also have some providers that are still prescribing on pads or things like that, or they're not using the EMR. So you want to try to use multiple qualification strategies. All right, another one, it's a manual review workflow. You want to have, as part of your day-to-day process of 340B program management, is that you're reviewing your non-capture claims. So highly recommend implement a process. You will be surprised of the reasons. These are some of the reasons that we recommend that you check for. Again, this all varies on the TPA and your setup and what data you're providing. But in general, you want to find prescriptions that are your patients, but they're not matching because of the visit or because of the provider or a catalog or a mismatch or location. There's so many different reasons, but you want to look at that. You want to make sure that you have a process in place where you're reviewing those prescriptions. This can be a time-consuming process, but we think it's critical to ensure that everything is working properly. This will give you a lot of insight into your program, where you will immediately be able to see why a certain prescription is not capturing and get that reason. And maybe that's something you can fix with automation. Maybe it's something that you have to add as part of your weekly checklist or monthly checklist, but it is something really key to ensuring that you are maximizing your value. So it's a very simple thing to do. Although it's time consuming, it's something that can be done. Make sure that your TPA can give you these prescriptions that are non-captured. You know, if you have to ask them for it or download it from their portal, and make sure that you're laying eyes on these and matching them up to your EMR to see why they truly were not captured. All right, next, let's talk about one of the top, I would say this comes up all the time in 340B now. That was not the case a couple of years ago, but it certainly is the case today. You must have a referral capture process in 2022. It is a must have. If not, you are leaving tons of opportunity on the table. And this is something that you can implement, whether you get a consulting company to help you with this, your TPAs are offering this service now. This is something that you must have a policy that reflects the process. You want to target specialty medications, specifically any high dollar medications. You definitely want to target you want to even find relationships. So going back to my first slide where I talked about pharmacy network development and talked about having specialty pharmacy relationships, you want to look at how you can implement a specialty pharmacy relationship where you might have your patients going to a specialist. They're getting that prescription filled at an Accredo specialty pharmacy because they're mandated by the insurance or whatever the case is, but the patient is going to that specialty pharmacy. You want to have that relationship be part of your contract pharmacy network so that then you get an opportunity to review these claims for a referral opportunity. Just in case we have someone that's very new to 340B, the basics is that you are able to consider a 340B, a prescription 340B eligible if you are able to show responsibility of care for that patient, that you refer that patient out, that notes came back in from the provider that treated that patient. I know people vary on that definition, but that's a basic definition of a referral capture, that there was a referral documented. Some covered entities require the progress note back, some don't. Some have a health system where there's a shared EMR. So there's different scenarios, but at its basic, these are prescriptions that are not necessarily written by providers employed by your covered entity, but are prescriptions prescribed to your patients for whom you are responsible for their care. So this is, again, another huge opportunity that if you don't have this process in place right now, you would be surprised as to how much 340B opportunity is currently being left on the table because of this. All right, and next we have the manufacturer block. So this is, again, probably the hottest topic in 340B. This is on everyone's mind. Quick background, there are now, I believe the number is 18 manufacturers. I could be wrong, please don't hold me to that, but I believe there's 18 manufacturers at this point that have all said they are restricting 340B pricing at contract pharmacies in some way. Some are doing it in ways that are limiting you to one contract pharmacy relationship. Some are doing it in ways where they're only providing 340B pricing at your in-house pharmacy, if you have an entity-owned in-house pharmacy. Some are even doing it in ways where they are setting a mile limit where your contract pharmacy has to be within a certain certain mileage from your covered entity, for example. And when that pharmacy, if that pharmacy is under that mile restriction, whether it's, I believe it's 50 miles is the one that or 40 miles is what one of the manufacturer has, then the 340B pricing will be offered at that one. So it's all over the place. There's different criterias for the manufacturer block situation. So you definitely want to educate yourself on what those are. The reason why this is a strategy to increase your capture rate is because although you were capturing all these prescriptions before, and now they have been blocked, some entities have lost in the millions of dollars of 340B opportunities because of this situation. So you want to be aware of this. You want to know what's going on with this, so that you can be able to recover some of that savings. So this is more of a way of recovering 340B savings of losses related to NDCs that are no longer available. And the reason why I added this to my presentation is because there are some entities that are choosing to submit the data to the 340B ESP portal, where manufacturers are asking for capture claims data in order for them to prevent duplicate discounts through the back end and through other ways. But we do want to say that our stance is that we support covered entities in doing whatever they think is best for their program. If covered entities do not want to submit this data, I'm certainly not saying you have to. So I want to make that clear. If you are waiting on the legal implications and results and things like that to come out, great. But there are some entities that are choosing to submit the data to 340B ESP and to obtain the 340B pricing on their contract pharmacy network. And we have seen some entities that are recovering hundreds of thousands of dollars from all the prescriptions that were previously blocked, and they are trying to get those replenished at a 340B pricing. So this is another part of your program or aspect of your program that you want to make sure you know what's going on and how you're handling it to make sure that it's not causing more savings loss than it should in your program. So I hope that helped. Again, our goal is to provide. We want to be respectful of your time, so we make these 30 minutes, but we want to give you a ton of value. We want to give you a ton of information that we hope it's helpful without the fluff, but just real knowledge of 340B and how the 340B program works, and how you can have strategies and ways to make your day-to-day operations better. So again, thank you so much. I hope that you guys found the information valuable. And Dan, I'll turn it over to you to open up the Q&A.
Yeah, so thank you all. So we're gonna leave this for Q&A. We're unblocking the allowing people to talk if they want. Anthony's going to start reading the Q&A questions and the chat questions now and start responding to them. So if you can stay longer and want to hear these answers to your questions, or if you want to talk directly to us, we are going to stay on. If you do have to drop, there's a number of ways you could contact us, and we're happy to follow up with you and talk to you in private if that works out better for you. Our contact information is here on the screen. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Anthony, and you can start answering the first set of questions that you were able to see that were logged in.